All right, cool. Ready, guys? All right. So, quick question. How many of you guys have buyers and sellers for gas stations and C-stores? Or sellers? Buyer or seller? Seller probably not, but buyers. Huh? The one that is, yeah, it's not. Again, I'm gonna get to that point. I'm gonna use that one as an example. No, I'm not gonna say it's yours. So there's a lot of people getting into that industry is because they want Hey, is because they want cash flow. Cash flow basically it's one of the best cash flow industries you can get into because it's a necessity. It's not a luxury, right? You need gas, you need groceries. People are gonna buy alcohol, people are gonna buy cigarettes no matter what. So that's one of the reasons. It's like basically recession proof. That's one of the safest investments you can make, but one of the hardest because the operation side is so intensive. So, I mean, what's the most important factor you guys think is uh to purchasing a gas station for an investor? What are they looking for the most? What's the most number one thing? What do you guys think? Perfect. Anyone else? What's the most important factor when investing in a gas station? Thank you. I don't care if you could be in a great location, but if you have 20 other gas stations in that great location, you're not making money. So the return on investment is the main thing, right? Your most important thing is going to be your revenue. Excuse me, there we go. Is going to be your revenue. And revenue is broken down into several factors. It's not just like, hey, this is the total amount and this is how much we're taking home. It's actually different. You're going to see a lot of times they're going to say inside sales, 100,000, outside fuel gallons, 100,000, just example, right? And then they'll say, okay, we also have additional revenues coming in. For example, we have ATM that pays us a commission. We have a Bitcoin machine that pays. So all these revenues add up, and that's what's going to give you your bottom line. And that's what you want to base your investment on is your revenues. I've had a location. So I've had a location in a real rough area, like low income, but it was great revenue and high profit margin because it wasn't that much competition. I was right, and it was not even by a freeway. Like a corner store by a neighborhood. And I had another location off of 290, but there was 30 other gas stations there, and that one lost money. So it just depends which way you want to make sure that's the main factor. Okay, am I going to make a return on this investment after my efforts? Now, what's a good return? It's different for every investor. For me, I shoot for minimum of 15%, right? Some investors are okay with 5% because they just want the equity. They don't care. They just want to build up the real estate. If it pays for itself, they're happy. So everyone has a different metric to go by. I mean, I'm being conservative. If I can get 25, 30%, obviously that's better. But you want to shoot worst case scenario, 15% in my opinion. Some people, like I said, are okay with 5, right? So there's other revenues. So like I said, ATM, Bitcoin, lottery. You also have a deli inside. A lot of times what that does is that also generates revenue if you're operating it or if you're leasing it out to a deli operator and you can make revenues. Like one of my locations I have in Dallas, that one, initially we were operating it, but we realized it's not worth the headache and we don't have the time for it. So what we did is just lease it to somebody else and we make extra 3 grand a month from it, right? Why not? Because the daily profit margins are typically 20, 30% anyways. Even if they do 20 grand, that's fine. They can keep the difference. We're okay with it, right? Hey, get the mic, the mic. Right. The daily?
Testing one, this one.
There you go.
Ash, can you go back and mention again some of the most important things you were saying? One would be the daily, another one ATMs.
ATM, Bitcoin, lottery, and deli. And then sometimes you'll see stores that have uh like you know how they have like it's like almost like a shopping center, they have tenants on the sides. That's also part of the revenue, right? If they're selling the entire property, you'll be getting that rental revenue adding to your bottom line, right? That'll help you cover your property taxes, your insurance, and things like that. So number one thing in looking for buying or selling is ROI, right? And that's pretty much in every asset class, right? Especially in commercial. I don't care if it's a hotel, the multifamily. If the return's not there, no one's going to touch it. That's why, since the interest rates are so high, we're not really getting that much traction right now in commercial because the interest rates doesn't allow the numbers to work at these prices. Prices are still elevated, and so are the interest rates, right? So that's the biggest problem. Okay, now the second factor is location. So that does matter, yes. But there's a few things you have to pay attention to in location, right? That are really important variables, right? Number one, obviously traffic. If you're on a corner, fantastic. You'll probably have more traffic if you're by the freeway. It's great. Second one is going to be population density, in my opinion, right? Especially if, let's say, you're not on a corner, right? Let's say you have a huge neighborhood behind you and it's just a one-way street. You still have a large population right behind the location, right? So that's a very important factor. So if you have a lot of right? So people, that makes it more walkable, right? Because I've had stores, like I said, in those kind of areas, and I've had stores in freeway areas. The benefit of having it in those kind of areas, the neighborhoods, because it's very walkable. So people in the neighborhood just walk to your store and they'll come and buy groceries. So that's a big benefit, right? Median income is also very important. The lower the income, typically the higher the crime rate. Unfortunately, but it's just a fact. The income, the higher the crime rate, making operation harder, reducing the value of the business. Right? So, like for example, if you know that you're in an area that is median income is $40,000 or lower, your crime rate is probably going to be higher, and people don't have as much money to spend to buy anyways. So they're going to steal, things like that. And theft is a big problem in those kind of areas, right? And that's in every business. The higher the median income, it's great, but then you have to look out for market saturation, meaning competition, right? So I'll give you an example. I had a store in Jersey Village right next to the Sam's Club on Shell on West Road. I don't know if you guys have been there. So that Shell was mine. Over there, we had about 15 gas stations in a 1 mile radius. Not to mention Sam's, Walmart, everybody else had gas too, right? Everyone was losing money over there. Everyone, not a single person. I knew more than half the people there. Everybody was crying. So that's what I'm saying. And they were willing to sell, this is pre-COVID again, at pennies on the dollar, but no one was willing to buy it. So there's a racetrack on, I can't remember the street name, that has been sold over there, maybe huh? No, it's not Fairbanks. It's right before West Road on 290. Can't remember the street name. No. But that was sold at least 6 times in 5 years. Jones Road. That one's been sold 6 times in 5 years. So and it's a beautiful store. It's 4 or 5,000 square feet, 10, 12 pumps. It was built maybe less than 10 years ago, but unfortunately, just doesn't run. 7-Eleven even gave it up. So that's saying something, right? So you have to be aware of the competition. Competition is a real factor. So what's another variable that affects location? Anyone else? That could hurt to make it harder to do business there. There's one thing that you can't put a gas station next to. What is it? There's 2 things. Church and schools. That means they're going to have no alcohol. And typically in stores, your alcohol sales are 20 to 30% of your gross revenue. So you have to make sure. And the rule of thumb for that is 1,000 feet from the front door of that facility to your front door, minimum. Anything, it should be further than that, but that's cutting it real close. If TABC officer wants to be a jerk, he'll deny you, even at 1,000. So I've known people. So I knew a good friend of mine. He develops the gas stations. So he purposely made the building facing the other way when he made it. So he was 1,000 feet away and he got approved, even though he was next to. Yeah. So there's ways around it, but again, it depends on how the TABC officers, are going to approve it, right? Okay. Door to door. Okay. I'm pretty sure you guys know about this, but it's kind of give you a great. I'm gonna go over expenses whenever let's say you guys have a buyer for gas stations. Expenses is a major factor, right? Because that's what's gonna affect your bottom line. What's the biggest expense gas station owner has? What do you say? Payroll. Average store that's 24 hours is between 15 to 20,000 a month in payroll. Minimum. 15 to 20,000 a month. Minimum. Like the lowest location. So yeah. So payroll, and it's gotten more expensive. So 10 years ago, it used to be 10 to 12. Now it's 15 to 20. So, and it's just going higher because we know people are requiring more. Like managers, we used to pay back in the day $12, $13 an hour. Now I pay mine 24, right? So it's literally doubled after COVID. And I'm low. Bucky's pays 37. Yeah. Bucky's is a giant, right? Yeah, Bucky's, I mean, their stores as big as Walmart's, right? And they have 120 pumps typically at a store. And they're making a killing. I mean, they have 40 locations and they do 2 billion of revenue a year in 40 locations. And their margin, typical, I'm going to go over the margins too, but I'll tell you it's just ridiculous how it's ingenious, right? But you have to have the money to do that too. That's the thing, right? Their marketing dollars are big, big. They're spending it right? You see the billboards like 75 miles away. Those billboards are like 10,000 a month. And they have like maybe 20 of them each way, right? They're spending the money, right? Oh yeah. I-10, 45. It's like you're only 115 miles away to the clean bathroom. Then you're 75 miles away. Then you're 50 miles. Like, this is nuts. Yeah. 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 Way. And if you notice, they don't have a gas price sign. Do you know why that is? They don't have a gas price. You know how typically stores you see a price of the gas prices? They don't have that. They're unbranded. I'm going to go over unbranded and branded too. They have a higher profit margin and they do more volume than pretty much anybody. So they have, because they're unbranded. It's not like Shell, Chevron, or, well, I'll go over the branding, but Shell and Chevron are branded and have cleaner fuel, but most people don't care anymore. Right? So that's why. Second, what's the second largest expense that you guys think we have or gas station owners have? No, something even more than that. No. If you're in a bad area, yeah. It's credit card fees. Yes, yes. So basically, I'd say about 60 to 80% of our transactions are credit cards. So if it's, for example, a location does $3 million, they say a lot of times they're going to charge you only 3%. With chargebacks, it averages out to 4%. So 4% on $3 million is $120,000 a year just in credit card fees. So that's a very expensive thing. And a lot of people forget to add that into their expenses when they're running pro forma or any kind of projections for a store, right? Like, that's fine. That's why I said 4%. I like to be conservative to be on the safe side, right? They'll say, no, I get 2.9%, basically 3%. But so you have to add your chargebacks in because there's gonna be people who have stolen credit cards. It's gonna happen no matter what. It's gonna happen. And you'll get a chargeback. It averages out to 4%. Doesn't matter. Most people like to argue with me about it. Like I talked to one of my partners about it. No, it's only 3. I was like, number one, 1% is not gonna kill you. Number two, it's better to be conservative. And then when I actually went down through the chargebacks, Amex, Discover, they have higher fees, right? Master and Visa is not as expensive. So it averages out to 4. So that's a very, very expensive metric that people don't realize that's there. Now, the third is going to be insurance, right? You have your insurances there. So you have 3 types of insurances in a gas station. The main ones that are, you can have, of course, you can have as many as you want, depending on what kind of area you're in, stuff like that. The 3 type that are the most used, number one is going to be your tank insurance, which is probably going to be your most expensive. Tank, underground storage tank. Those go for anywhere between as low as $500 a month up to $1,500 a month. And that depends on the type of tank you have. And I'll go over that in a bit too, because there's different type of tanks. There's not just like one type of tank and that you're good to go, right? You're insuring if, for example, if the tank contaminates the soil in the ground, to remediate that, insurance covers it. Otherwise, it's very expensive to do. It costs, yeah. And also, if let's say somehow water gets into your tank and someone, you pull up to the gas station, you fill it up in your car, it messes up your car, the insurance covers that. So that's very important to have. So it's a necessity, very necessary expense. You have to have that. So regardless of what happens, it's a must. It could be as low as 500, depending on the type of tank you have, right? So it could be as low as 500. I've seen as high as 1,800. So it just varies. It could, depending on the company, like right now, insurance is high for every asset class. Monthly. Yeah, in a year. I wish. I wish. You know how that's extra 15 grand in my pocket. Second is gonna be your general liability. Now that basically covers and if anyone has a slip and fall in your store, someone gets hurt, God forbid there's a crime at your store, it'll cover those insurances. If someone tries to sue you, something happens, they want to, file a claim against you because they slipped in your store, that covers those things. And that's a must. That's not as expensive, but you can go from $1 million policy up to a $5 million policy. It just depends what you go with. That can vary. Yes. If someone tries to file a claim saying it was because of your negligence or the owner's negligence that they did, or the employee's negligence that they didn't somehow call the police on time or something, people can litigate for any reason, right? So that's the thing. General liability. Yeah. Hmm? Right now we are at one of my locations is about 400 a month, and the other location is 650. So the lower income area that I had it in, which was a bit rougher, that one was 800. OST. That was my first one, actually. That was my very first one. But those are the ones that are profitable. Again, whenever you're in a high-end area, you don't profit as much unless you don't have competition, right? And I'll give you some examples of what is a really, really good location and what's not so good. Third one is going to be structural insurance for the building. If someone runs into the building, which has happened at one of my locations before. And the funny thing was I had parking pillars in front of my stores, right? Somehow she went around and hit it. I don't know how she did it. The funny thing, we had the guy when we set it up. He said, "Hey, you can do 12, but I can make it work with 10. No one's gonna fit through here." I was like, "Okay, just do 10. It's gonna save me $1,200. Why not?" And she fit. I don't know how she did it. I cannot believe. I was looking at the camera. I even went out. It was a younger lady. I asked her, I was like, "How did you do this?" She goes, "I don't know." She was a regular customer. I was like, "Ash, I'm so sorry. I didn't know." Luckily, she had insurance, so but still, just headache. Yeah, luckily. Next one. Okay. For structural, it's typically the same thing. Could be between 250 to 500. Workers' comp, I was going to get to payroll side on that. Yeah. Yeah, that's going to be the other one. But that's under going to be the overall expenses. But yeah, you can add workers' comp if you want to go ahead and add that in there as well. That one, it's not as expensive nowadays, surprisingly. So, it's not really a huge, maybe 150 bucks, depending on the policy you get. It's nothing crazy, right?
These are all.
Monthly. Yeah, monthly. So that's another thing. Remember when I mentioned outside, inside revenues? Like outside sell, inside sell? If you ever notice, you guys, I don't know if you ever see my flyers or anyone else's flyers, they say monthly sales, 100K inside, 100K out. They won't say 1.2 million or 2.4 million a year because most investors are lazy. They're not going to want to do the math. Wait, that divide by 12, and they're not going to do all that. They just give them the monthly. They can figure out, okay, monthly after all my expenses, I'm taking home this much. That's it. So if you can have the annual revenue, but just show it as a monthly if you want to make it more easier for most investors, because majority of the investors are going to be, Pakistani, Indian, Middle Eastern, and they just want, what am I making every month right now, right? Okay. So after all those expenses, I want to go over the valuation. How would you value it? What do you guys think the multiple is on gas stations based on revenue? Hotels is between 3 to 5. Just give an example, kind of a baseline, depending on the location. But yeah, no, I wish. That'd be amazing. 2 to 3. 2 to 3. It's less than it. And it's going to be based on mainly on the inside sales. They're not, because gas typically you don't make as much of a profit margin. I'm going to go over multiple. So let's say, for example, a business does 2 million a year in revenue, right? You can get anywhere between 4 to 6 million for it in today's market. So basically, let's say, for example, the revenue of a business is $2 million. A multiple would be basically, if I say 2x, you can get up to 4 million for it. Depending on if it's a really nice location, you can probably get 3 multiple for it. But if it's not so good, or if it's decent, you probably get a 2 multiple. And if it's not good at all, you'll probably get a 1.5. Right? So it just depends. The location, if it's more crime, less multiple. That's what I was like, it affects the valuation. So lower income, more crime, less valuation. You're going to get maybe 1.5. 2 if you're lucky. If someone's really desperate and they want the location. And if it's in a nice area, you can get 2 to 3. Easy. No, that's the annual. So let's say 2 million a year. Yeah, the valuation, right, to sell it. So if someone wants to exit it, so let's say if you get a listing and it's in a decent area, the store's not too old, it looks good, you could probably comfortably get a 2 multiple. So if it's doing 1.2 million in revenue, you should be able to get 2.4 million for it. You should. Again, macroeconomics has an effect on that because of the interest rates, things like that, right? So say that again. No. If it's 1.2, in a decent area, you should be able to get a 2 multiple. So that's 2.4 million. So if you're doing 1.2 million in revenue, you should be able to get 2 to 2.4 million comfortably with it easily. It's a good metric. It's just the first, that's a bird's eye view of trying to figure out, okay, what I can sell this for. Then you got to dig into the numbers and see if that makes sense, right? Because if the return is not there, if you're not getting a 15% ROI after all your expenses, it's still not going to be worth the 2 multiple. Minimum for me. Again, everyone else is different. I'm going to go over the type of investors that want different kind of investments as well. Yeah.
So you said the multiple do we differentiate between inside and outside sales?
No,
It's
inside,
just-
it's going to be based mainly on inside.
inside, okay.
Outside, volume will affect it, but
Right.
majority of our margins are made on the inside.
Sure. Okay.
Gas, you make, sometimes you lose money because of credit card fees, sometimes you make money, right? If the gas prices drastically drop, by the time the market catches up, that's when we make our spread, right? Otherwise, you're making maybe 3 pennies, 5 pennies, nothing crazy. So no one cares. Volume does matter. I mean, some locations make a killing, but again, that location doesn't have any competition. So I'll give you an example. One of the, I mean, he's a Middle Eastern guy. He's a kind of a nice guy. But he has that Chevron on San Felipe and 610. You guys seen it? It's maybe 1,500 square foot store. He makes $1 a gallon. He makes it. And over there, people just swipe and leave. So he's charging $1 a gallon. And he does 150,000 gallons a month. So that's net in his pocket. The store is just paying for the expenses. So those are the kind of locations, but he's been there for 25 plus years. So it's very hard to come by those locations in the city. Maybe if you're out in, you know, outskirts somewhere, you might get lucky, but you're not going to get that. It's very difficult. Everybody wants that. You know, if you guys get it, I'll buy it. So, but it's very, very hard to find. That's why you're seeing a lot of people just starting to develop, because you can't find anything that makes sense based on the premium that they're asking, right? So I want to go over the branding and what the difference in brandings are, right? What do you guys understand about branding and unbranding? Yeah, but how does it affect the business?
But
Not in gas stations.
well,
No
the-
franchise fee. No.
typically the branded has some kind of additive in it, right? That makes
It's
it
cleaner fuel depending on the brand.
better
Yeah,
brand,
it's
so-
technically better fuel, but again, 93 octane is 93 octane.
right. Right.
So basically the biggest difference is when it's branded, most likely they had to sign a 10 to 15-year contract, and they have some kind of deal, meaning you'll hear a term called rack plus something, right? Rack plus 1, rack plus 2. What that means is you're paying the cost price plus 1 penny profit to the fuel distributor, right? So that allows you, basically, you're into a 10-year contract, for example, right? And they're going to provide you with some incentives. They're going to give you rebates. They're going to pay you to get their brand there, but you have to agree to buy a certain amount of gas from them over 10 years. Let's say, hey, you got to buy 1 million gallons from me for over 10 years. So you owe me that for the 10-year contract. The benefit of that is typically branded stores have higher volume, except Buc-ee's. They actually, but you have smaller profit margins because those branded gas is more expensive for the business owner, right? So that's can be a plus and a minus depending on the location, right? Like one of the locations I had, I'll give you an example, used to be a Shell. When my contract expired, they wanted me to renew. I said I didn't want to. So I made my own brand. It's called Fast Track Fuel. You can see it over there. I sold that location now, but yeah, made my own brand, found my own distributor. Where I used to make with them maybe 3 pennies per gallon, I was making 17 pennies a year, 17 cents. So I literally 5x'd my profit on the gas. So that's how that works. So unbranded, the benefit is that you're making more of a spread, but you have to put forth all the money. You got to put up the canopies. You got to put up your own branding. So it's very expensive, right? So it could cost upwards of $250,000 to $500,000. It's very expensive, especially if you do it right. If you do it, paint it yourself and stuff, that's different. But you can see the quality of work, right? You can tell. So branding will work, and typically they'll have higher volume but less profit. So that's why I say people look at the inside sales more. And if I'm like confusing anyone, just feel free to ask anything if you have any questions. Anybody? Yes. Yes. You've already put forth the capital and you have a higher profit margin on the gas. So for example, let's say if I'm unbranded at one of my locations and someone comes and buys it and decides to go a brand, They can put in new pumps with the brand. They can put up new canopies, new signs. So the store has a newer look to it, right? Those are very expensive, but they have to be obligated to a 10-year contract to a certain amount of fuel volume, right? Depends on the numbers and the location. So if it's in, again, rough area, not so good. Good area and you have good numbers, oh, you'll get a 4 multiple all day. If it's unbranded, good location, and good revenue, people will pay 3 to 4 multiple all day. No problem. Okay, so my next one was going to be, yes, go ahead. Some of it, not all of it. So let's say, for example, you sign a deal with Shell or Chevron or something. They will say, hey, you know what? We want you to get new pumps, new canopies. It's going to cost you $700,000. We'll give you 150, 200 as an incentive. But then you have to pay them that rack plus 1, rack plus 2. Typically, rack plus 1 is standard. If anything is like, I don't know if you guys talked to Steve. Steve had 7-Eleven did a horrible deal with like hundreds of locations. So if you notice, 7-Eleven's closing a lot of locations because they did rack plus 10. Just horrible. Like that, no one's touching those stores because even though 7-Eleven left, that property owner signed agreement with Sunoco for that contract for the next 9 years left. No one wants to touch it unless the guy drops the price significantly. He's wanting 2-3 million. People are, I mean, I even offered Steve, I said, I'll take it for $1 million. It's a great location. You're going to lose money on gas. So if imagine now, if I'm doing 100,000 gallons of gas a month and I'm losing 10 cents a gallon, that's $10,000. I'm losing. That's the problem, right? So those you have to pay attention to those minor details because they add up very quickly. This is a pennies business, what I like to call it. It's all 1%. I mean, imagine if you can increase your revenue by 5% on a $3 million store, how much is that? 150,000 a year extra in revenue, net profit. So it's a pennies business. You have to pay attention to those margins, right? Yep. You're not, yeah, you're stuck with them for the 10 years. And if you don't hit the fuel volume, let's say, for example, Sunoco said, this location has to buy 2 million gallons of gas from us in 10 years. If you don't, they just extend the contract. So you're stuck like Chuck, basically. So it's not worth it. You'll lose more money up front because they'll have their penalties and the gas that you owe them. So let's say, for example, they rack plus 10 and 2 million gallons, that's $200,000 a year, right? Plus, so let's say if they have 9 years, that's 1.8 million plus their penalties. Would you want to pay $2 million out of your pocket upfront just to get out of a contract? No one would. So you don't want to be stuck in it like that. Mm. Oh, pass the mic. You need the mic. Mic. Mike needs the mic.
So you're saying, I think, that if they're obligated to buy so many gallons of gas over 10 years, right? What happens if all of a sudden overnight they perfect these electric cars and all of a sudden nobody's needing gas they don't even need gas or as much 5, 6, 8, 9, 10 years, then what happens?
That's a good question. Everyone is worried about that in the gas station industry. But what they're doing is they're also adding, if you notice, like EV charging stations at the gas stations now. And those are also being provided by the brand. So they'll figure out a way and negotiate it into the contract. They're gonna make money regardless. They're not gonna let the owner or the business owner go just like that without paying a penalty. So, hey, if you don't hit your fuel volume in 10 years, we'll go to another 5 years. We'll do another 5 years until you hit it, until you pay us. So for them, they want to make sure they get paid, right? Just like a bank, just like any other business would, just like a landlord would, basically, right? They want to make sure they're getting their rent or their payments. So the EV charging, do I think it's going to affect it? It is, and it already is. I mean, I'm sure you guys see all the Teslas and everything, but I think it's going to be at least another 10 years before you see 50% of the cars on the road that are EV. Because the range isn't there, right? Everyone has that range anxiety. So no one really wants to get stuck going somewhere and I got to charge 45 minutes over here at the charging station, right? So it's going to take time and it's going to happen. But again, remember, the gas is not the main revenue driver for us. It's the inside sales, right? So I can charging station's better for me. That means because when someone's sitting at the charging station for 45 minutes, what are they doing? Thank you. And if I have a deli in my place, if I have coffee, snacks, put up a TV, they're spending money. So either way it goes, our main goal is to bring people in. A lot of these things that we have, lottery, like there's not much profit on cigarettes. There's not much profit on lottery, right? 5%, 7%, that's it. But it's to bring in traffic. It's the main thing, again, like I said, foot traffic, location, right? So that's what matters. So you'll see people, go ahead, sorry. This is Mike. Oh, this is dead?
So do you have to pay for the electrical
Yes.
charging stations?
Yeah.
You do? Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, you mean like for the
Do they
power
pay
usage?
you, or do
The
no
power usage or for
right.
the
for them to charge there, to charge up there? Do they pay you?
the
The
customer?
charging station, yes, the
The
customer.
customer, yeah, the customer pays.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
so, and what
that's
it-
another benefit. For
That's
you.
another benefit, right?
it's not
It's
much.
not much, but
okay.
yeah. Per kilowatt hour. Again, it's getting more expensive. I don't know if you guys notice charging yours, if any of you have EV, it's getting more expensive to charge, right? So, yeah. Oh, Mike.
Okay, once the 10 years have passed and you've already met your minimum
Contract.
contract. So what happens? Do you usually stay with them, or
You have option to renew or you don't renew. It's completely up to you.
and if you don't renew, you can still stay with the
You
branded?
can still stay with the branding because you've obligated the contract. Now it's all you're good to go.
You pay the same though.
You're paying the same.
Okay.
Yeah, and then you have the option to change the branding or change things you want. And typically after 10 years, you want to put in new pumps. So a lot of people end up renewing because they want the updated pumps, and they'll help you split the difference and kind of get you on, get that
Okay.
contract. So
Okay.
you have the option. Like I said, the Shell that I had, they were willing to, give me another 10 years and help me get pumps and this and that, but it was still going to end up costing me 400 or 500 grand, and I'm making less on gas. It just doesn't make any sense.
Sure.
Right? So that's why you want to make sure that, like, again, revenue, the numbers have to be there. If you have enough volume and you think that's going to make a significant impact and you have a profit margin there, yeah, absolutely. But if not, then it's not worth it. Okay. So now we're going to go over the type of the building and the equipment, right? So building and equipment, basically by building, I mean the age of the coolers. How old are the coolers? AC units typically take 10 to 15 tons for every 3,000 square foot store, right? 10 to 15 ton units for every 3,000 square foot store at least. 10 tons is usually good, but 15 is, in Texas, 15 is good to have, right? What are the bathrooms? What kind of condition the bathrooms are in? If it's really old and messy, old doors, old sinks, old toilets. So those are the things you want to pay attention to. If you have a buyer looking at one and you guys are going under contract or he's really serious, make sure you guys look at the building. I mean, you're not appraisers, you're not inspectors, but at least have an idea of, okay, hey, this looks really old, or that cooler's lights are out, or some you'll see little things that kind of give away how old and what kind of condition the current owner is keeping it in, right? Because sometimes you'll walk into a store like, this is a mess, right? So those are all expensive. I just put in a cooler. I'll give you an example. At a new location I'm doing in Dallas, we're converting it to a Chevron. That cooler cost me $80,000, and it's only a 10 door. So people put in 15, 17 doors. So it's very expensive. Parts, equipment are very expensive. 80,000. Well, that one is a different. That one is no, it's not actually. That one doesn't even have gas. So that's a shopping center with a convenience store in it. I'm adding gas to it, so I'm spending the money there. But that's very expensive to do on my own, so that's why it made sense. So, and we did a study on it. I'm gonna go over the study too. We did a study on it, and Chevron is actually one of the best brands in the area. People love it. They do the most volume. The study is called IMST, by the way, if you guys don't know what it is. IMST. That's just the company's name. But basically, that'll give you projections of what the store's trending, what it's expected to do. Are they correct, accurate? Usually not. But that's what banks like to use and the brands like to use. They're typically off, from my experience, 20 to 25%. They're typically off. That's a lot. So that's why I try to be conservative on my numbers, right? So.
gas stations and truck stops, are they basically
Same thing.
same thing? Okay.
Yeah, except the biggest difference, truck stops are more expensive, require more land, have much higher payroll because they're bigger, but they do fantastic on diesel if it's a good location. So truck stops usually have a better multiple because they do more diesel gas. So that was actually number 8 on my list, by the way. But yeah, I was gonna go over truck stops. Yeah, so truck stops are good locations. If the numbers make sense, it's a decent area, we can find a buyer for it. Otherwise, like I said, I'll buy it. It's fine if it makes sense. All right. So where was I? IMST. Yeah, IMST. So that's going to give you projections. They're going to give you typically 3 projections. One is going to be a high, going to give you a low, and they're going to give you an average, right? Most people just use the average, but brands sometimes use the high metric in order to get the deal done because they want to get business owners under contract because they're making a penny, 2 pennies, plus rebates from the back end. So they need to get volume moving because they all, just like how we have a contract, the job or the fuel distributor has a contract with the brand. So they're required to do a certain amount of volume too. So when we don't hit it, they don't hit it. So it's kind of a team effort, but at the same time, we're making the least amount. They make decent money, and the brand's just, Exxon made like 35 billion last quarter or something. Something crazy, right? So that's for my location in Dallas. For the location I'm doing, we did a study and Chevron came out to be the most in demand in that area. Because you know how they have reward points, we can kind of gauge based on the reward points who's using what where, and Chevrons are being used a lot over there. So okay. Now I was gonna go over underground storage tanks. There's 2 main types. One is gonna be stainless steel, one is gonna be fiberglass. Which one do you guys think are better? Fiberglass. Yeah. Stainless steel rusts. So they have to put up a separate system called a cathartic protection system, CPS, that prevents it from rusting. When it rusts, especially with fuel in there, it leaks. So insurance remember I told you the insurance is affected by the type of tank you have. So one of my locations has a stainless steel tank and it's been a nightmare to deal with that one. My insurance just keeps going up on that one. Probably typically every 10 years, 5 to 10 years. Yeah. I mean, if it's fiberglass, I mean, those tanks last 20 years easy. The stainless steel ones, if you don't have a cathartic protection system, if you lose power and it can't consistently send that shock wave in order to prevent it from rusting, it's going to cost, it's because it has cost me a lot. I've learned the hard way. So I know it's very expensive to fix. Very expensive. Cathartic protection system, CPS. Yeah. I mean, if you have an existing, or if you're trying to repair it, I mean, just to repair the one I had cost me like 25 grand just because the power went out for 10 minutes. So it's very expensive. If you want to put it, I mean, typically now they don't even install cathartic. If you have a steel tank in there in your ground, they won't even say, they say just put a fiberglass. They don't want to deal with it. Because they're going to tell you it's more expensive to do that and your insurance is going to be higher. Just take these old tanks out, put the fiberglass ones in. So if it has fiberglass tanks, it's a plus. A tank? To remove and install, you mean? 600,000? Hmm? Everything. It's about 600 to 700,000. Easy. Fiberglass. And that's going to be all 3 tanks. So typically I wanted to go back on the tanks too. So now you know the fiberglass tanks are there. There's typically 3 type of main tanks most stores have. It's going to be a regular, a super, a diesel. What am I missing out of these? Super is premium, same thing. What am I missing? $87, $91, $93. So 91 is plus. So there is no plus tank. So what they do is they blend the regular and the super together to make your plus. Most people don't know that. Yeah. So and it works fine. It's the same thing. But my advice, either use regular or super. You don't get plus. It's not worth it. It's a blended. All right. It's just a blend. So either if you need super in your car, just put super or just put regular. Plus is just you're wasting your money. It's not doing anything because Super actually cleans your fuel injectors. If you have a good branded one like Shell or Chevron or something, they actually clean your fuel injectors. Regular, what's up, Bart? Yeah. E85 is not that high in demand, and most people don't like ethanol. I mean, most only people that I know that use E85 are racers. Like they like that corn fuel for tuning cars and racing. I don't know a lot of people that use E85. They have ethanol in it. Yeah, well, it's a mixture. It's a blend of E85 and regular. No, they'll say it on there, but it's really small. If you look in the button, it'll say 87 octane with ethanol. But it'll say 10% or more. It'll say 10% plus or 10% minus. 10% minus is better. It doesn't say it. It doesn't say it. Yeah. So there's some stores, if you go out in the like towards Dallas area, they have like literally banners saying no ethanol in our fuel. Because people don't want to put ethanol because that does corrode your fuel injectors and other parts of your engine over time if you consistently use ethanol all the time. So you have to have a special kind of tuning and stuff like that for that. So yeah. Okay, now basically I wanted to go over the buyer types. There are two type of buyers for a C-store, gas station, truck stop, right? Which are what? Any suggestions, any ideas? Good one. Indian and Pakistani, yeah, that's it. There's a lot of Middle Easterns too, although. I'm working on a listing with the Chinese guy too, by the way. Investors is one, and owner operators is the other one, right? So what's the difference? So operations, meaning they're managing the store themselves, they have systems in place or they're running it themselves. The investor is like a doctor who has millions of dollars and they just want a return on their money. So they'll do typically like a cap rate type investment. So you'll see 7-Eleven is pushing these a lot, these lease back deals, which is basically setting it up as, hey, give me $6 million and I'll give you 6% on your money. Right? So they're guaranteeing them $360,000 a year on an absolute triple net lease for 15 to 20 years. Right? And the strategy works, but if they close that location, the investor's out of luck. Because I mean, what are they going to do? Sue 7-Eleven? Right? Yeah. Good luck with getting it. It's like all the CVSs that are closing, Walgreens are closing. There's investors that own those properties. They're still in litigation with them. What are they going to do? That could last years, right? So it's a good, if it's, again, location matters. When it comes to the investor type, location matters. If it's a busy location, they're doing well, it's a high-end area, but typically then they'll give you a less cap rate for that too. They're probably going to give you a 4.5, which is a horrible return, in my opinion, right? Even as an investor, you can put it in the stock market, get 7-8% easy without the headaches, right? Depending on the location. I know some that are giving 8%, but this way out in the middle of the jungle, right? If you see the Family Dollars, they're offering 9 caps out like, outskirts of Houston. Why? But there's so many Family Dollars closing. So if they close, your money is stuck. You probably financed it, right? Unless you paid cash. You're paying property tax and you're not collecting any rent. So you have to be cautious about the location too. The second one is the owner operator like me, right? I'll have systems in place, managers in place, and we're the ones looking for that 15, 20% return on our money, right? And that's a cash on cash return. That's not just a cap rate return. I'm saying like I put in a 500K, I want at least 10%, 15% on my money, right? Example. Okay. Any other questions you guys have regarding the gas station part? Questions that might arise from your investors, your buyers, your sellers?
Why would a gas station, like in new areas, why do they, one comes up and then they're all in 4 corners? Why?
Welcome to the
I
way
mean-
of business of Indians and Pakistanis.
Because if they're not going to make any money, why would you do that?
They
No.
don't care. Again, some are okay with the 5% return, right? Some are okay with the 5-10% return. Some are saying, hey, you know what? If this guy can do 20%, if I come here, I can take half. I'll make 10%. And then a third one comes in, hey, they're making 10, I think I can make 5. That's all it is. It's desperate because they don't want to, they like Houston, they want to stay here and they're looking for businesses here, right? So they're willing to develop. I mean, I've seen guys, if you go on Harwood and Founder, and there's 5 stores on one corner. Next to it, there's one on each corner, and then someone else opened next to this guy on this corner. There's 5 of them there. I was like, what the hell is going on? And it's pointless. It doesn't make any sense. But that's why it's becoming so saturated. That's why I said location used to matter. Yes. Now it's about revenue. Is it even worth it? Right? Is it worth your time, your effort, the money you're putting in? Because gas stations are one of the most operation intensive businesses you can be in, because you have so many moving parts: equipment, employees, customers, marketing, vendors, contracts, so many things, right? So minimum. Cash flow. Cash flow. It's just cash flow. I mean, back in the day. So I know one of the biggest C-store jobbers and owners in the US. They have 640 locations. He started back in the 80s, right? So everyone just thought, oh my God, this guy's killing it. Just jump in. So, and it's a great if you have a good system in place and you can find good locations, it's probably, to me, one of the best cash flowing industries you can be in. But again, it has very, very operations intensive. So never let your client think that, hey, it's easy. It's not. I've been in jewelry industry, I've been in cell phone industry, real estate industry, and and by far gas station you'll have the most headaches out of everything. They're losing money. So be very cautious about that. People love to fudge their numbers. They love to fudge their numbers. Like I was telling you, they will always fudge their numbers because they want to get out. And basically, it's like a saying in our language, like basically he wants to put the noose on someone else's neck, right? That's all it is. So go ahead. So there's a few ways you can verify numbers. You can do it through, of course, you want to look at the POS reports. You want to look at the financials. Those can be fudged. Even financials, I've seen people fudge financials, right? They're willing to pay extra taxes for 2 years. Huh? Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. They want to avoid paying taxes, all kind of things, right? And a lot of times they'll show more numbers and they'll pay more taxes just to get out. Because think about it, right? If I can pay an extra 30 grand in taxes for 2 years, but I just showed my financials that instead of 1.5 million, I'm at 2 million. Remember the multiples? So now I paid 60K extra in taxes, but I just got 500,000 back, right? So that's how that works. You have to be very cautious. So another way you can look at it is, and this is me doing it, it's not easy, but looking at the amount of purchases they do every year. You got to dig into it. You have to see the margin, see what they're buying. Most people don't do that, but I do, just to verify, because nowadays people are you can't fudge those, because you're not going to buy $1 million inventory, right? You'll pay 60K in taxes, but you're not going to buy, because imagine if a store is saying he's doing 150,000 in sales, he's going to have to at least buy 150,000 of inventory every month, right? Minimum. So times that by 12, 24 months, he's not going to buy that much, right? So you can tell. Like I can walk into a store in 15 minutes and tell you he's not doing these numbers or he is, right? So those are the things you have to look out for. Purchases. Me personally, but again, if you have someone and you guys need help, just give me a call. I'll help you out. But it's very nuanced. A lot of time. I mean, there's ways to get around that. To people, yeah. If, like I said, if people are willing to 10x their money, they're willing to do these kind of things, right? So, I wanted to also talk about retiring, losing money, and probably some family issues typically. Yeah, those are the main 3 people, because no one's going to sell a cash flowing asset. I mean, would any of you sell a cash flowing asset? If you're taking home 6 figures a year, would you sell it after your expenses and you're building equity? Nobody would. Not in retiring, losing money, or family issues, like someone's sick or something. So I stole a store to a client of mine in Alamo, Texas. Just this past May, he's renovated. He spent about $500,000 on it, and he's starting to get offers for it already. He bought it for a pretty good price, and he closed in 30 days. It was great, real nice guy. His mother ended up getting cancer, so he wants to be with her now. And he's like, I don't. And she lives in Dallas, and this is in Alamo, so he's moving back to Dallas to be with her. So he's saying he's gonna let me know probably next year we're gonna sell that location again. So things like that are the only reasons. No one's gonna sell a cash flowing asset unless you're getting an amazing premium, but then it's not cash flowing for you, right? So let's say if I go and buy someone's store they're making 15%, but I'm buying it at a premium and I'm only making 5, it doesn't make sense, right? So 12 years. And gas stations, 12 years. Yeah. Yeah. I've made all the mistakes. Very expensive, but you learn. It's part of business, right? Yeah. Existing. Developing nowadays, depending on the location, is very hard. And the problem with developing is great. I mean, if you have the funds for it and you get a great location and the projections are right on the money, fantastic. Typically, that's not the case. A lot of times it takes time to get that location to that point. So those are all holding costs you're having. So let's say, for example, you buy a land for $1 million. Gas station typically costs, I was going to go over development with you guys as well, but the gas station typically costs between $250 to $350 a foot to build. So if you build a 4,000 square foot gas station at $300 a foot, let's just take the average. You're talking about what? 4 and 3, it's that. Another 1.2 million. So that's $2.2 million you're in, right? And your projections are showing X amount, and I'm going to give an example of that happening. But you don't hit those numbers. So now you're financing, you owe the bank money, you're losing money yourself, you're paying your payroll, and you're just drowning. It's like quicksand. You're just steadily going into the ground. So you have to be very cautious with that. And that's in any industry, of course, right? So I'll give an example. There's a guy in Conroe. He did the same thing. So my cousin's store on 105 is here. There's a speedy checkout here. Speedway, I think it's called. And he opened right in the middle. He bought a piece of land, acre. I think he spent way more than that. He paid a premium for the land because he thought everyone's doing great here. I'm gonna do fantastic. All in, I think he was in at about 4 million, him and his 4 partners. The store itself was 6,000 square feet. They put in 10 pumps. So they're like, we're gonna kill these guys. We're gonna go all out, right? They put in $1 million down payment. They financed it. The projections were 150,000 inside and 200,000 gallons gas. They went, oh my God, we're gonna be millionaires, right? They were like, it's time. So they opened and they got repoed by the bank in 6 months. It could be a lot. It's a lot of variables that could affect it. Most people, I mean, they're probably trying to get the funds together. They probably bought the land, and they're probably just trying to get the funds together, getting investors involved to help them with the development. That's why. Yeah, it'll be construction loan. So typically what they'll do for lending, if you can buy the land outright in cash, they can use that as collateral as your down payment towards the construction. So that works too. Or some people just put the whole money down, down payment, and they'll just refi once it's built out. They'll just put the cash up front and they'll just refi, and they'll make money on that too. So there's different strategies, but again, it's all taking that big risk, right? So, so the location I'm doing now, just to get my occupancy permit, took me 8 months in Dallas.
Get it completely drawn up, get a construction loan for it, all the things.
18 months. If everything goes smoothly. It's a starting number. 18 months to be up and running. If, like I said, if everything goes perfectly and all the planets and the stars align, yeah, you can get 18 months. I've seen it in 18 months. Because if you notice, like, for example, I've seen TimeWise do it even quicker, but they're a huge conglomerate, right? They're a huge TimeWise. They're just bam, 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 right? And I've seen people, like you said, 2.5 years. I've seen people take 4 years to develop a gas station. So it's just depends, right? There could be, a lot of variables: the city, the county, TABC permitting, tobacco permitting, lottery. There's all these things you have to get, right? So there's a lot of things, right? I was gonna go over something else. I can't remember what it was. One more thing I wanted to go over. Yeah, if you're marketing, if you guys get a listing for a gas station or C-store, and the main thing you guys, I mean, you want to make sure you get, number one, make sure your numbers are legit, because you don't want to look bad in front of any investors, because if your buyer fudges the numbers, you're the one on the hook on it, right? So just make sure you verify the numbers and at least have financials. I mean, he's not going to give you his purchases and stuff, but at least make sure you guys have the financials if you get a listing like that. So that way, whenever an investor comes in, that, have them sign an NDA and then share the financials, however you guys want to do it. But make sure that you guys don't get stuck with, like, bad numbers in a bad location and a bad client. All right. So that's one thing you can get in. Because if the deal goes through, they'll say you were in cahoots and all that stuff, and you don't want to get involved in that. Cool. Any other questions? Yeah. 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 But legal disclaimer can do it. If someone wants to, litigate, they're gonna litigate. They can go after whoever. It does, but I mean, if they want to go out, they're gonna do it regardless. So, yeah, Art, what's up? So traffic-wise, that's a good question, actually. I'm glad you reminded me of that. Traffic-wise, if it's an intersection store or a highway store, typically look for 50,000 plus cars minimum per day. And if it's like a neighborhood store, minimum 10,000. That's probably the best. I mean, the more the better, obviously. I'm just giving you guys a minimum. Because if you're on a major intersection or highway and you're not even seeing 50,000 cars, there's a problem, right? That means it's a dead highway. And same thing with the neighborhood. If you're not getting at least 10,000 cars or close to it, right, then there's a problem. So you want to shoot for that. Again, the main thing is making sure that people are coming into the store, right? Because that's where we make the profit, right? So you want to make sure that the traffic is there. So typically, I'll take like a 5% ratio. So if it's 100,000 cars, I shoot for, at least, if I can get 5,000 cars a month, you're fine, right? So the higher the number, the better the ratio works out, kind of, right? So you want to shoot for a good amount of cars swimming by your store. So for example, if I get 5,000 cars a month and each car spends average of $200 with gas and groceries, that's 100,000 in sales, right? So. But if it's an existing store, you'll already get a good idea, because a lot of times POS reports will show you how many transactions you had throughout the day, right? So they'll tell you, okay, you did 100,000. It'll tell you X percentage of it was tobacco, X percentage of it was alcohol, X percentage was gas, groceries, so and so, right? Groceries. Well, now novelties. Novelties work good too, like vapes and stuff. Yeah, trinkets, vapes, keychains, they have a higher profit margin typically. Yeah. Because now, like, a typical profit margin for stores now, because of the saturation in the market, is like 27% averaged out, which is not high. I mean, I shoot for 30 to 32 now. But yeah, if that's something that it'll give you a good baseline. Now, that's just the baseline. You have to dig in and do the numbers yourself, because that depends on the ratio. Let's say someone is selling a lot more tobacco products than they are groceries. You don't have that margin anymore, right? So like I said, when you see it in the POS report, okay, if 50% of your sales are tobacco and 30% is alcohol, I mean, number one, you got a problem in your area. And number two, yeah, people aren't eating food, and your margin is going to be significantly lower, because like I said, on cigarettes, you make maybe 6-7%, 15 to 18%. Yeah. Novelties like, vapes and trinkets and stuff. Yeah. Lighters, things like that. That's where you make more money. That's just typically have a higher profit margin. So it helps you bring the averages up. So I hope I didn't go over too much information or anything. Yeah.
So You compare like your best store to like Bucky's. So where's Bucky's really killing?
Everywhere.
No, I mean, but inside the stores, their own branded stuff.
Their own branded stuff. So typically, like I said, on the rule of thumb, 27%, they're probably averaging 48 because it's their own stuff. They're manufacturing, they're packaging their own items. They have their own warehouse and distribution center for their own stores. So like for them, like they don't have to go to Frito-Lay for chips. They have their own chips, right? Exactly. They're making a killing on their deli. They have like 70% margins on their those brisket sandwiches and stuff. They're killing it. They have quality stuff. So they have managers for each specific section of their store. The ones they pay $35, $40 an hour to. They have like a manager for peanuts. They have a manager for coffee. Then they have a manager for chips. And then they have like they're that, system, like, organized, and they're killing it. Which one?
They bring in a lot of product from individual people as well.
They do, but a lot of their branding, the question was the profit margin. Where are they making the most profit? It's from their own branded items. Yeah. Yeah. No, but if you, for example,
I understood they were about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now they.
The Bucky's, yeah. So they're supporting local businesses too. But again, do you think they did that just out of the kindness of their heart? They're getting a higher profit margin. They say, hey, you know what? We'll save you. Be our exclusive distributor. We'll be your exclusive distributor, but I want a 48% margin or 45% margin. That's all it is. But they're okay with it because they're still surviving. They're growing. Because end of the day, again, it comes back to ROI. If I'm going to invest X amount in something, any of us, you put it in the stock market, you put it in any kind of business or asset. If it's not generating a return, why would I do it? Right? That's why people are sitting on the sideline so much right now when it comes to investing, right? There's trillions of dollars on the sideline right now. It's all going to the stock market right now because it's going crazy. But eventually we're expecting it to next year and hopefully into real estate so everyone can do better. So yeah. Cool. Anything else? Good to go? Yeah, Mike, what's up? You mean as a grocery store? Or the Bucky's? Bucky's? Oh, the HEB. I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah, Bucky's typically, I mean, for example, a good store does like 100,000 gallons a month. Bucky's does probably 1 million a month. Yeah. 120 pumps. And that's like on a regular average. I'm saying on summer peak time, they probably easily hit 2 million. Yeah. It's two guys that they started smaller convenience stores. They combined it into one bigger one and it worked really well. They just focused on making bigger and bigger stores. I don't know their names. I forgot their names. But yeah. 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 Cleaning bathroom. Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, a lot of their stores are on like highways and nice areas, good neighborhoods and stuff. So they're just making sure they're providing that customer service, right? If you go again to a rough area, it's much harder to keep the bathroom clean over there. So, and I mean, I'm telling through experience because I've been on both sides, right? So I've been in areas where no problem, rough areas. I literally had to hire someone just to stand outside the bathroom to clean every time someone got out. So it's like that. Yeah. So cool. Any other questions? Good to go? Now, no. And COVID, yes. Because COVID, no one wanted to work because they were getting the stimulus checks. And whoever was working wanted like $25 an hour. So it wasn't going to happen. Yeah, it was not harder. So, because when you're getting free money, no one's going to want to work, right? So that's what it is. Cool. Anything else on that? Any questions? Good to go?
Right.
Cool.
Thanks, Ash.
Thank
All
you.
you guys on Zoom, this recorded session will be available probably in the next couple 2-3 days. As soon as I figure out how to do that. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
That was great.